Hello, everyone. It's welcome time now. Fantastic to have you all for this webinar, which is the first webinar in a series of webinars that called LSE Global South Dialogue Series. My name is Alvaro Mendez. I'm the director of the LSE Global South Unit, and this is fantastic. At a time where everyone is talking about Trump, it's good to be able to discuss very important things that are happening in terms of the Global South, the interactions with China, the BRICS, and so on. And that's what we're here for in this particular space. And I hope that we'll be able to participate and join the questions as well in what we're going to be discussing today, which is navigating the geopolitics of BRICS, the perspectives from Southeast Asia. I'm delighted because I have an incredible speaker with us today. Professor Kuik is Professor of International Relations at the Institute of Malaysian and International Studies, ICMAS, at the National University of Malaysia, UKM. He's concurrently a non-resident senior fellow at the SAES Foreign Policy Institute at Johns Hopkins University and a non-resident scholar at Carnegie, China. He was previously a postdoctoral research associate at Princeton, Harvard, China, and the World Program, as well as a visiting research fellow at the University of Oxford. Professor Kuik research focuses on the external policies of small and secondary states, big powers, and the Indo-Pacific, Asian security and international relations. I'm delighted to have you with us, Professor Kuik. And I will give you the floor in a second. I also want to introduce our moderator, who will be with me in the series that we're going to be holding throughout this year, 4 in total. His name is Professor Gregory T, good friend of mine. We worked together for a while. He's an expert on BRICS. He is currently an associate professor of political science and political economy at York University in Canada, and a senior fellow of the Global Development Policy Center at Boston University, and of the Foreign Policy Institute at Johns Hopkins University. He's also a fellow, senior associate at LSE Ideas, so we're very happy to have him here. He's the co-director of the Emerging Global Governance EGG project, Policy Journal Online. And having said that, welcome, Professor Kuik. We're really looking forward to your words, to your vision, and it's an honor for us to have you here at the LSE Global South Unit in conjunction with LSE Ideas. Welcome.
Thank you, Professor Alvaro Mendez, for your very kind introduction, and a very good afternoon, good evening, or good day to everyone, depending on wherever you are. Let me begin by thanking the organizers, both LSE Global South Unit, as well as LSE Ideas, for having me here. When Professor Greg Chin and also Professor Alvaro Mendez first contacted me about this inaugural session of the LSE Global South Dialogue Series, their message for my task this afternoon was very clear. They want me to present a Southeast Asia perspective about BRICS, about geopolitics of BRICS and big powers. And since I'm presenting a Southeast Asian perspective, I thought, in addition to my very strong Malaysian accent, I would wear a Indonesian Malaysian batik in order to reinforce and also to highlight the Southeast Asian perspectives, the Southeast Asian voices that you are going to hear at least for the next 20 minutes or so. So for my task, I would have 3 big points. I will have 3 points. First part, I thought I would talk about some misunderstandings that we have been hearing, we have been reading about why more and more countries from the global south, not just Southeast Asia, but also beyond, are joining BRICS or becoming new members or dialogue partners of BRICS and BRICS Plus. So the first part, I would deal with misunderstandings. Second part, I thought I would also highlight driving force, driving factors. There are 2 contending driving factors that very much driving and also motivating and shaping why countries in various regions are expressing an interest in joining BRICS in one way or another at different timing. And finally, since this is a Global South dialogue session, I thought I would highlight, and as a way of summing up the discussion, what do all this mean to Global South, not just Southeast Asia, but Global South as a whole, especially in the Trump 2.0 era. So first thing first, misunderstandings. So there are a number of misunderstandings that I think any one of us can highlight, but I thought the three are most representative, three are the most notable to highlight the complexities of how countries, how observers, how experts, not just in the mainstream circles, but also across global south and beyond, are perceiving same phenomenon that is happening in one way or another. So the first misunderstanding, I thought it's about many interpret all these phenomena, more countries are joining. I think we all know BRICS started with 4 members and then 5 members when we have South Africa joining Brazil, Russia, India, and China become a BRICS by 2010. But by now, 2025, we know that we have 10 member countries. And the 10 and the most recent member is none other than Indonesia, the big country, big brother from Southeast Asia. So I think the first misunderstanding that we have been hearing, even until to these days, is that it's all about anti-West. It's all about anti-US. I think so much so that President Trump was threatening whoever joining BRICS, whoever take part in de-dollarization, we are going to sanction with 100% tariff, right? So I think in a way that reaction, that statement, that kind of a punishment, quote unquote, represent to a large extent, I think, some misunderstanding that BRICS or BRICS end users are very much about anti-US and anti-West. I said a misunderstanding in the sense that there are some bases. There are some bases. I mean, this misunderstanding is quite understandable, primarily because of Russia and China. Many would think and see BRICS as an organization, as a global South entity that is led by Russia and China. And to a large extent, and because of Moscow and because of Beijing's anti-West, the perception about these are the two anti-West powers, and therefore BRICS by extension is being perceived as such. But the reason why I highlighted this is a misunderstanding is very straightforward. We know that BRICS is not just about Russia and China. Look at the old members, right? We have India, we have Brazil, we have South Africa. These are non-West, but not necessarily anti-West. Though those parts are clear. And we can even very quickly add on that India is not just in BRICS. India is also in Quad. The quadrilateral security dialogue consists of United States, Japan, Australia, and India. So clearly the presence of India, South Africa, and Brazil, the old members, clearly indicates that to dismiss and perceive and describe BRICS as anti-West is too simplistic. How about the new members? I think we have a number of, we have 5 new members. We have, I think, 13 countries, partner countries. And let's take Indonesia as an example. Indonesia under the new president, President Prabowo, is very interesting. Before he became, officially became the president of Indonesia, we knew that he was invited to visit China, but he make it a point. Right after China, he make it a point to visit Tokyo, to visit Japan as well. That is certainly an indicator of a very balanced policy. When he officially became president, he again was invited to visit China, and again, he make it a point. Right after Beijing, he made it a point to visit Washington, D.C. He met with President Biden. He had a phone call with President Trump, so on and so forth. So those are indicators to show us that BRICS and BRICS Plus is not as simple as it is about anti-US and anti-West. It's more complicated than what the perception about Russia and China BRICS is all about. So that is the first misunderstanding. How about the second misunderstanding? And those are those who are very much talk about across global South. They say BRICS or BRICS Plus is all about global South. It's all about global South causes. I think that is true to some extent, but not completely, which is why it is a misunderstanding. It is true to some extent in the sense that global South or promoting global South cause to promote a more equal, to promote a fairer international order, to promote multipolar war, all those in vis-a-vis the global North or the global West, clearly it's that one of the driving factors that why countries of very diverse ideology, identity, and also interest come together. That clearly it's one underlying or common denominator. And it is also one of the main reasons that why countries across Global South, in Asia, in Middle East, and elsewhere are also joining BRICS. However, to say that the BRICS and BRICS Plus is all about Global South, cause I think that is too plain simplicity in the sense that it would not be able to explain why India and China, for example, are competing in so many ways in the NDB, the new development banks, and in many other aspects within BRICS. It's all about global causes, but you do see New Delhi and Beijing are competing in many ways. That is happening side by side with the bilateral territorial problems that we are hearing, we are reading. And it's not just about India and China. We also understand Russia and China, despite the current high level of a convergence, strategic convergence, in light of the war that is going on. But however, there are some disagreements, there are some underlying nuances, if not tensions, that are going on. And a lot of some issues, I think the most recent Kazan summit clearly indicates that some ideas, initiative on currency, for example, on the financial aspects that are promoted by Russia, might not necessarily be getting the kind of commitment and also supports across BRICS members, even though they are about the Global South causes and Global South solidarity. So those are second misunderstanding. How about the third misunderstanding? I would say the third misunderstanding is this is more to do with the community of IR theories, those who focus on concepts, those who focus on theories will say that BRICS and BRICS Plus are all about balancing. And my first reaction is, wait a minute. I think balancing, you can call it soft balancing, you can call it institutional balancing, might be relevant, but it might not be entirely correct to characterize what is going on within BRICS. Why? Again, you can say that Russia and China, they are using BRICS as an institutional platform to counterbalance US, the principal threat. You can even say that among the new members, Iran is one example that is very much also driven by the threat perception. US and the West who are sanctioning Tehran as a threat, and BRICS, just like the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and many other tools, are part and parcel of the instruments, the toolbox, for them to counterbalance the perceived threat. However, I would say that the balancing dynamics explain primarily those countries, Russia, China, and then Iran. You can say that India, to some extent, it's balancing China vis-a-vis within BRICS, but IR theories have a term for that, right? They call it intra-institutional balancing, meaning that you are not using an opposite or outside institutions, but you are using within the same institution to counterbalance the perceived threat. So India represents that kind of a category. However, the point here, the reason why I describe institutional balancing or balancing as a misunderstanding to characterize BRICS is primarily because for the vast majority of the members, old members, new members, and prospective members, partner countries, it's not so much about institutional balancing. It's not so much about balancing. It's about hedging, it's about institutional hedging. So with that, I would like to enter the second part of today's presentation, the discussion, in a sense that I believe in addition to institutional balancing or balancing dynamics as a driving force, it is very important to bear in mind whatever your perception about this word. I know hedging is quite a contested, controversial term these days. Many see it in a way negatively. Some interpret hedging like sitting on the fence. Some interpret hedging as impartial, indecisive, or even a double-faced. Those are misunderstandings, but those are the subject, those are the issue that we shall deal with in a separate session. But let me very quickly to do the task that Alvaro and also Greg tasked me to do. They want me to talk about BRICS, and then let me, as I said, in addition to balancing and institution balancing, hedging and institutional hedging, it's a very important conceptual or even theoretical perspective and framework for us to understand why countries who might not necessarily see any country as a threat, unlike Russia, China, and Iran, many other countries, they see multiple dangers. They see multiple risks. They might not necessarily see certain risks as a threat. Therefore, I think there are some more recent theoretical debate within IR saying that it would be a misleading effort to describe all dangers as a threat. For dangers, depending on whether they are short-term, long-term, immediate potential, or concrete or less concrete, clear and present or potential, you need to use different terms to describe that. So for threat, meaning a clear and present danger, balancing and institutional balancing, like in the case of Russia, China, Iran, make a lot of sense. But the same cannot be said about the other countries who see dangers, but not necessarily threat in the real sense of the word. And my apology, you can hear some backfire firework and also firecrackers in the background because today is the last day of Lunar New Year, right? Talking about uncertainty, I think Alvaro and Gregory, when they decided this date, that we didn't clearly realize that this is happening. And my apology. I hope this will not last too long, and I hope you can still hear my presentation. But in a way, the timing is good to underscore life is about uncertainty, right? And with uncertainty, there are risks. And this awareness about risk, the potential unpredictable dangers and issues that will harm national interests is clearly one of the main reasons, the hedging imperative that drive countries, especially across the global south, Southeast Asia for sure. Why countries like Indonesia is becoming the 10th member of BRICS, why countries like Thailand, like Malaysia, are listed as among the partner countries, why Vietnam was listed at the Kazan summit last year, but this year they are not on the list. We shall deal with that later on, perhaps during the Q&A. But the whole point here, we want to highlight that, as I mentioned, there are two driving factors that are motivating countries, big and small, as big as Indonesia, as small as countries like, for example, relatively smaller, Malaysia and Thailand, to some extent Vietnam, and we knew in other regions beyond Southeast Asia. They are also either expressing their interest to join BRICS, or they are already on the list in the queue to become one. And as I mentioned, the current interpretation of this is all about institutional balancing clearly is not correct. Yeah, it's correct only for those countries that I mentioned, Russia, China, and Iran, but not correct for the rest of the other old members and also the new members. And institutional hedging make a lot of sense. So with that, before I move on to the third and also the final part about what do all this means for Global South, let me just make some quick quick comparison about institutional balancing and institutional hedging. Earlier on, I highlighted that balancing as well as institutional balancing is about threat, immediate, perceived, and concrete dangers. Whereby hedging, institutional hedging is about risk, perceived danger. And you might wonder what kind of dangers that the countries who are already the new members and the partner countries are seeing that motivate them of joining BRICS as the one, and let me highlight, as one of the means, one of the institutional means to mitigate those risks. There are multiple kind of risks. We can group them into the geo-economic financial risk, right? The why countries are taking part in de-dollarization. It is not so much about entire US. I know many mainstream observers describe those who are involving in de-dollarization as an entire US, entire West movement. They got it wrong. It's actually about trying to mitigate the risk of dollars domination. And with that, the economic financial vulnerability it will come with the political risk. So the geo-economic risk of you are exposing yourself to one currency dominance. It's not just about the financial consequences. It is also about the economic consequences. More importantly, it is also about political consequences. And what do global South countries have in common? There are many commonalities, but one commonality is really about many of these countries, and I said many, not all, many of these countries are post-colonial states. For post-colonial states, political risks are among the dangers that will be prioritized for domestic reason, sovereignty reason, autonomy reason, but also for external reason. So no countries would take very lightly about the kind of political risk that we are seeing. So those are among the risk perception, not threat perception, that are driving countries to see BRICS not as an alternative, but as an addition. It's an additional platform. And that reinforces my earlier arguments that BRICS membership is not necessarily about anti-US and anti-West, because many of these countries, as they are joining BRICS in one way or another, in different timing, they are by no means stopping, downgrading, or severing their long-standing partnership in the Western-centric, US-centric organizations. They are continuing to take part. So BRICS is just an addition. And it's not the only addition and might not necessarily be the primary addition. It's just one of the multiple additions. Good example, again, Southeast Asia countries provide some good examples. Thailand and Indonesia, under different leaders, have decided to join OECD at the same time when they are talking about BRICS and all that. Those are good examples to show, to underscore, as to support the observations that I make early on. The first misunderstanding, the second misunderstanding, and also the driving logic of it's both about institutional balancing, but also about institutional hedging. Hedging is all about just in case things might go wrong. And therefore, you want to have some plans B. Today, you're not talking about one plan. You're talking about multiple plans. So it's about plans B. And BRICS is being perceived by some of these countries, if not all of these countries, as among the plans B, that they are thinking it makes a lot of sense to have it in one way or another, or at least to register the intention. So with that, I think I'm ready to sum up by the third and also the final and hopefully a quicker point. What do all this means for Global South? So I would say that the very fact of highlighting the three misunderstanding and also highlighting institutional hedging, it means that the Global South leadership is not going to be the same as the Global North leadership. Global North leadership, you can see a very clear case of United States. It's a very clear Washington, D.C. led Global North or Global West, whichever term you want to use it. Global South, I don't think you are going to see the kind of arrangement or structure, leadership structure. Some say China is playing that. I think China will want to think that. Some in the West, in the Global North, are also seeing as such, but I would highlight those old members of India, Brazil, and also South Africa, and new members might not necessarily see China as a natural leader. We knew China is having relatively some superiority advantages in many ways. Even economic relationship between China and South Africa, China and Brazil, you could see there is some kind of central periphery structure. So that doesn't necessarily translate into Brazil, South Africa, let alone India. I might not necessarily be Russia to accept China leadership role in the Global South. So the Global South leadership at this point of time is going to be very fragmented. It can be issue by issue, case by case, sector by sector. And you can even see some fluctuating. That is to be expected because of China's slowing economy and all that. There are lots of challenges that even if China has the will to play that role, it might not necessarily be translated into that. And the last point beyond the leadership issue would be across the non-big powers members or potential members of BRICS across the global south. I think with the growing uncertainty with US, with China, with US-China, and also the next tier power relationship, I think what most countries, Southeast Asia is representative, but they are not alone. We are not alone in doing that. Today, many of us, we try to hedge. We try to hedge by insisting non-alignment or neutrality. Non-alignment, neutrality as the policy means. We continue to stick to this policy means. And what are the, we are sticking to neutrality and non-alignment as the policy ends. That's the objective. But the means to achieve that policy ends of multi-alignment is through the to pursue non-alignment policy ends. We are using multi-alignment as the policy means. Sorry for being distracted by the joy out there. But let me re-emphasize the last point that I'm highlighting. What do all this means for Global South is that more and more countries, Southeast Asia and also beyond, we are doing all we can to continue to pursue non-alignment as the policy ends by using multi-alignment as the policy means. And BRICS is one of the multiple means. So some means are institutional platform. BRICS, OECD, and many other organizations that we talk about. Let's not forget the ASEAN. Let's not forget about the ASEAN Plus. ASEAN Plus 3, East Asia Summit. Those things are being promoted by ASEAN countries and being taken part, involving multiple powers in Asia, but also beyond Asia. In fact, ASEAN-led mechanisms are among the platforms that continue to be part and parcel of the multi-alignment partnership or statecraft that we talk about these days. And as things become more uncertain, we are foreseeing countries, even or especially the weaker and smaller ones, are going to try to be more active, try to be more inclusive and adaptive in pursuing the non-alignment while multi-alignment, which BRICS is one of the many multiple means and multiple partnerships. With that, let me stop here, and sorry for taking a slightly longer than planned. Back to you, Alvaro, and back to you, Greg. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Kuik. It was a wonderful intervention by you, and we couldn't hear the fireworks actually. So I'm very glad that you have been making all these very important points. I'm going to give the floor to my colleague, Professor Gregory T. Just before I do that, as a chair, I wanted to bring just the issue of the NDB. How do we, as researchers, and a lot of my students are here, a lot of my colleagues, how do we analyze the BRICS, given the fact that we mostly focus on the NDB because it's easier as an IGO, we have members, and a lot of the members of the NDB actually overlap the membership of the BRICS Plus, including countries like Uruguay, who is a prospective member of the BRICS, and they don't attend, of the NDB, they don't attend the BRICS meetings. We can add that as an add-on question to Gregory. Gregory, please go ahead.
Thank you, Alvaro. Cheng-Chwee, so happy to see you. It's great to see you. And thank you for your excellent presentation. I echo Alvaro. So happy that you are our inaugural first speaker for the Global South Dialogue. Alvaro and I, when we put together this dialogue, we thought you'd be the perfect first speaker, in part because we're very aware, of course, Global South is a contested concept, right? Not everyone's the same in the so-called Global South. And I think your presentation did such a nice job of balancing between this opening up of the concept of Global South and looking at the different particularities and variation across different states and societies across the three continents. And yet at the same time, telling us something about how it adds up. Because yes, Global South is contested. There isn't just one simplistic Global South, but at the same time, we know that the developing world, developing countries from the South, they have their own interests, their own agendas, and they want to have more voice. And they're working together on their own and together to advance their interests. And I think you did a very nice job of helping us open up the concept of Global South for our first presentation. So thank you so much, Cheng-Chwee. And there's so many levels to your presentation, and I've followed your work for a long time. To me, you are truly the leading scholar on hedging, not only Southeast Asia, but from the global IR hedging analysis, foreign policy. But today you also gave us some of your updates on your thinking, thematically, conceptually, institutional hedging. I know you thought a long time about risk and threat, but the way you linked it to the question of BRICS, I think is very, very interesting. And the positioning, for countries such as Malaysia and other Southeast Asian countries, vis-a-vis the West as well as the BRICS. And I think that so many things for us to follow. I have so many questions, but I will discipline myself to just two. Just building off of your presentation for the first point, and your points about hedging and your arguments about how for countries such as Malaysia, but also Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, and others in Southeast Asia, how joining BRICS or their interest in BRICS is about cultivating an additional layer of platform for their engagement globally and creating additional space for their strategic maneuvering, and for their management of risk, both perceived and actual. And I really appreciate you built in even the currency point about de-dollarization or so-called de-dollarization. Also contested, to what degree there's actual de-dollarization going on. China asked this question too, despite their RMB internationalization. But I know the Southeast Asian countries are very interested in local currency options for exactly the reasons you say about managing economic and political vulnerability. But yes, working off of the logic of your argument, additional layer and platform, external space for them out of their BRICS Plus participation, Southeast Asia, what do you think are the main obstacles that stand in the way of the Southeast Asian countries realizing their approach, right? As you say, it's not threat management, Russia's positioning per se, rather risk management. But what do you think stands in the way, Cheng-Chwee? I'd be interested in that. That's my first question.
You want me to respond right away, Greg?
Alvaro, I think
sure. I can wait for your remaining questions and then whichever you prefer.
Why don't we go with the second one with Greg, and then we answer the one that I put forward, and then we open to the floor to the people, to the participants. Is that okay?
Sure.
So do you want me to go ahead with the second?
Yes, Greg, please. Yes.
Okay, sounds good. So the second question, Cheng-Chwee, also working off of your points, what are some of the debates between let's say Indonesia's leader, or and Prime Minister Anwar from Malaysia, Thailand? Obviously they don't all have the same agenda, the same interests. What were some of the debates they had about joining BRICS, whether they should join or not? Obviously, Philippines, we know, and Singapore have been much more kind of reticent about BRICS for differing reasons as well. But it would be interesting to hear your thoughts about that. And just related to that, Malaysia is the host of the ASEAN this year, the main host. How do you see the role of the Southeast Asian countries in BRICS playing back into ASEAN? And as you mentioned, the ASEAN regional agenda? Is there a kind of what Professor Kevin Gallagher and we've talked about this idea of kind of two-way countervailing leverage or two-way influence, like leveraging of your influence from one platform back, into another. Is there any thoughts along those lines about maybe, because obviously, as you say, the ASEAN and ASEAN +3 agenda is very important. And we know the Asian countries are talking about doing more with their financial cooperation, for example, Chiang-Mai initiative, right? Doing more with it, going beyond just an emergency fund, so I'm just curious, whether, for example, in currency or in other things, payment systems or what, or even climate, green finance, sustainable infrastructure. I'm just curious, your thoughts or the trade agenda. Yeah. Thank you, Cheng-Chwee.
Thanks so much, Greg, for your very tough and sharp questions. I think you actually have 3 questions rather than 2 questions. So let me deal with them together and in a way that allowed me to respond to Alvaro's early observations as well about the NDB. So I thought the first question about what really are the barriers, the desirable, how can we translate the desirability into feasibility, right? I think we all want additional space. We all want additional platform in light of the uncertainty. But whether or not those additional platform can actually provide the kind of desired avenue to pursue our respective goals that remain to be seen. And to answer your question, what are the barriers? I think the barriers clearly are multiples. The main barrier, I would say, is actually more to do with the intra-BRICS issues, right? Intra-BRICS issues, I believe those leaders who make the decision of joining or associate with BRICS as partner countries, they are clearly not naive by seeing BRICS as a very united, coherent entity. I do not think any leaders in any regions are naive to have this simple or simplistic view. We all understand. It's not even a well-kept secret. I think it's in the news, and everybody are aware of the intra-BRICS disagreements. And again, China, India, it's one set, but clearly there are many other kind of like divergences across these countries. So those are already reflected even for the journey of how to create the NDB. I think that's pretty much kind of reflective in that case. But of course, once it's being institutionalized, you could see there are more momentum being built. And therefore, I would say countries, big and small, Asia and beyond, we are pragmatic enough to see that we understand there will always be obstacles and barriers, right? So the intra-BRICS dynamics problems is one big obstacle. But again, the convergence, the shared view of we all want to mitigate different kind of risks that are not just my risks, but it's almost everyone or majority countries who are not part and parcel of the global north or global west. You do see the kind of risk, I think, in different degrees of agency, right? So those are the driving factors that we are aware of those obstacles. There are a lot more barriers, technical barriers. De-dollarization, again, I think is a journey, is a process. I don't think, again, kind of sensible policy people would kind of optimistic enough to know that this is going to be kind of, we are going to have some breakthrough and all that, but you need to start somewhere in one way or another, which allows me to bring back to kind of, I would say, some historical journey that relate to your second question, and also a third question to a large extent, because I think it's no coincidence. It's no coincidence countries in Southeast Asia, which are among the earliest to express to join BRICS, are those countries who actually suffered during the Asian financial crisis, right? So during Asian financial crisis, we thought this is a problem not just for one country. In a way, it's a regional problems. It's a financial issues that affect economic system. And then there was some kind of disappointment, because Asian financial crisis 1997, 1998 took place not long after Mexico had some similar issue. So in Mexico's financial problems, we saw United States, the big brother of the free world camp, did help Mexico. So Thailand and countries, US partners in the region were kind of disappointed that during Asian financial crisis, we did not see the kind of help externally, right? The World Bank, IMF, clearly there are some, no free lunch, right? You need to pay some trade-off in order to get, and then there are domestic kind of a setback and also challenges that did not allow some countries to go into the IMF formula. And therefore, financial crisis is kind of like an interesting, I wouldn't say the watershed moment, but clearly it's one of the key moments, one of the critical junctures where planted the awareness and also the regional determination of regional self-help. Regional self-help is important. US will continue to be important partners in so many ways. But again, regional self-help, it's necessary. So I think countries in the region, especially in ASEAN region, who suffered Asian financial crisis, Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, and so on and so forth, we were among those that we realized that as we continue to do what we have been doing, take part in the World Bank, IMF, ADB continue to be important, but we need to have some self-help mechanism. What kind of self-help mechanism that we talk about? Japan proposed Asian Monetary Fund. It did not go anywhere for power dynamics, right? You have economic logic, financial logic, but it doesn't pass the test of political logic. The US dominated the logic, right? So again, we understand that. But Greg, you mentioned about Chiang Mai initiative. So those are among the first step self-help mechanism. And it was possible. Chiang Mai initiative as a financial surveillance mechanism is one of the self-help mechanism that came out of the Asian financial crisis. So since there is a financial kind of vulnerabilities, and we do not have, the strong backers, so we need to have the kind of a currency swap. So that was the outcome. It's not perfect, lots of problems. Today, many are criticizing it, but again, we have seen some good progress in that self-help journey. And they are based on the ASEAN-led mechanism. ASEAN is imperfect. ASEAN is insufficient in many ways, but ASEAN is indispensable to provide this kind of regional self-help, right? Without ASEAN-led mechanism, there will be no Chiang Mai initiative that involve all 10 ASEAN countries, plus Japan, South Korea, and China. And without that, in Chiang Mai initiative in 2000, there will be no CMIM, right? Chiang Mai initiative multilateralization that happened 10 years later. And then again, you can put on to say that even though Chiang Mai initiative multilateralization might not sufficient to tackle the next Asian crisis or regional financial crisis, but today I think regional countries are in a better position. To cope with the next financial crisis in one way or another. And this allows me to relate to Alvaro's question about the NDB, right? I know it's such a big issue, especially for those observers who are following about the BRICS and related issues, but for the wider, the countries in the wider developing world, the global south, I would say that we will also pay attention to other parallels, like for example, AIIB, right? AIIB, again, it's among all these like non-West and self-help mechanism that we see some risk and shared risk, and this risk cannot be accommodated or cannot hope to that we can count on in order to address the kind of problems that we are seeing by using the old formula of Western centric of institutions, right? And therefore, I think even India, who is not comfortable with China, who see BRI as a threat, but India has no problem in joining AIIB. ASEAN countries are among the earliest. ASEAN countries are among the most receptive to join AIIB. And even many US allies in Europe and Asia also are joining during the better days, right? Today is getting a bit more complicated. But I would say NDB, do we want to join? I think do countries, new members, and also partner countries want to join NDB? I would say the first reaction is why not? But are we in any urgency of joining? I would say that it varies from country to countries. Some perhaps are more ready. Some would say that we have more greater urgency in order to leverage on NDB as the additional, not necessarily the principal or sufficient fund, but additional. In addition to AIIB, in addition to bilateral partnerships that we can deal with from various countries in one way or another. So I believe those responses in a way address Alvaro's observation, and it addressed Greg's first question, but not partially the third question, but not necessarily the second question about the disagreements and also debates, right? Which I thought this is a good question that allowed us to address some of the issues that I was not able to talk about early on. I mentioned Vietnam briefly, but we didn't get a chance to talk about why Vietnam was among the 13 countries listed in Kazan summit late last year. But this year, there is a new list. Vietnam disappeared from the new list, right? So that reflects clearly countries, even though who express interest or are seriously considering, there are lots of internal debates. Some are stronger than the others, right? That thinking that, yeah, we know the logic of BRICS. It's one of the additional platforms to mitigate the risk that it's not just about you, but also about all of us. Some more urgent than the others. But again, you get something, you lost something, right? There is no free lunch for every aspect, right? So again, joining BRICS, some would say that you get some benefits, but the cost, the trade-off might be too big. Whatever we mentioned about the misunderstandings, but clearly those misunderstandings are some perceptions. You can say they are misperceptions, but perception matters. And perceptions matters in at least, I think, discouraging countries like Vietnam to think that maybe they can shelve that move for now. And I do think that perhaps, and this is just my interpretation, I'm pretty sure my Vietnamese friends might have some different interpretations, but from my limited conversation with some Vietnamese experts and colleagues, we clearly understand that there are some reasons that hold Vietnam back for now, right? For now. And I don't think Vietnam say that we shut the BRICS door. I don't think any countries, any governments would do that, right? You keep the options open. But for now, Vietnam is not in for a number of reasons. And this is what I was told by some observers and also experts who are more familiar about Vietnam. So the perception about BRICS are too critical and anti kind of West and mainstream is clearly one reasons that deter or discourage. In fact, some might say that Indonesia under the earlier government, Jokowi government, they also think that they are already in many arrangements with all these non-Western countries. They did not see a point and urgency of joining BRICS, right? There was earlier governments, yeah. So, but clearly the perception about the alignment position is one reasons. And there are other reasons thinking that, yeah, yes, economic logics, economic benefits are clear reasons that why all these countries want to join. And some would say that Trump 1.0 and then Trump 2.0, it clearly shows some trajectory, right? It's already happening. We are going to see more to come in the sense that US will continue to be very important economically and many other sense. But we also know that in relative terms, right? The dependency on US and US dominated system is clearly in the mind of many leaders. That's one. But there are also other reasons in the sense that since with the tariff and more threat of tariff, it means that those we have been enjoying for so long, the access to a US market and also the related markets. Today, you know that it might not be the same. It will continue to be there, maybe still majority, but it's not going to be as substantial as before. You need to have more rather than less additional markets to offset in one way or another. Not one, not two, but it'll be more. BRICS, as we highlight, is one of the many, right? So again, I think economic reasons will continue to be there. But again, some would say that you can still assess those economic benefits without joining BRICS. Maybe that's the reason why Vietnam current leadership think that they can wait, right? But for other countries, I think for Thailand, for Malaysia, and then now for Indonesia under Prabowo, I think they clearly judge that they make a lot of economic and geopolitical sense to join BRICS as one of the additional, as they express interest to join OECD, as they express many mechanisms. Some are ASEAN, some are ASEAN plus, some are non-ASEAN, but the more the merrier, right? So, and Thailand and Malaysia, it's a slightly different category in the sense that we all understand that we need some global platforms. So within Southeast Asia, only Indonesia is a member of a G20. Indonesia, because of its sheer size and also its importance at the global scope, is very natural. Indonesia, sometimes they don't have to, make efforts and all that. They would get invitation, right? So Thailand and Malaysia, we do not have, a seat at the G20, right? Singapore, for a lot of reasons, they always have the kind of arrangements. They were they were able to take part in all those global, even Arctic, arrangements and all that. But for countries like Thailand and Malaysia, we would think that as uncertainty become greater, as uncertainty also more rooted, not just at the region level, but global level, right? We shouldn't wait. We need to be more proactive. We need to be more proactive beyond ASEAN. By going into non-ASEAN like BRICS, OECD, and others, doesn't mean that we are ready to give up or reduce the importance of ASEAN. That brings me to your third and final question, Greg. So again, it's about additions and not about alternative, right? We do not see any of these platforms, non-ASEAN, ASEAN Plus, or ASEAN Base, as one alternative over the other. No, we can go concurrently. Which one will get more important? It really depends on how things evolve. So at the moment, the multi-alignment that we talked about earlier on, it's very much driven by three driving principles as we can observe in the region and beyond. It is active, meaning that you cannot be afford to be passive, wait things to happen, right? You need to proactive, preempting some kind of a risk that are emerging, economic and geopolitics, and you want to do something before rather than later, right? Be active, be inclusive. Inclusive meaning with the West, but also non-West, nothing personal. And active, inclusive, and then thirdly, it's about adaptive, right? Adaptive means that as things become more fluctuating and become even more unpredictable, you are going to adapt by either investing more in the earlier arrangements, or you add even newer mechanism. So this year, during Malaysia's ASEAN Chairmanship, we are going to witness a newer mechanism called as ASEAN GCC China, right? So GCC, the Gulf countries cooperative mechanism, right? Some see this as a continuity of Malaysia's bridging Malaysia and also ASEAN countries' approach, right? About regional integration, interregional integration, and now global connectivity cooperation is about 3 Bs, right? It's about bridging, it's about binding, it's about building. You bridge countries of different regions. ASEAN plus 3, you bridge Southeast and Northeast Asia together. East Asia Summit, you bridge East Asia countries with India, which is South Asia, and also Australia and New Zealand. Now with ASEAN GCC China, we are bridging more countries within across different regions. Many of these are not only in geographical south, but also in global south, right? And then with bridging, and because those are institutions, and institutions meaning what? They are binding, right? It's not a one-off. It's not a this year happening, next year, bye-bye. No, it's institutionalized, meaning that every year we are going to bind countries together. Over time, once being bridged and being bind, you are able to build cooperation. So Chiang Mai Initiative, multilateralization, and the most recent example was RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. That is the largest economic arrangement on the globe, right? 50 members. So 10 ASEAN countries plus Japan, China, South Korea, and then Australia, New Zealand. India was not ready after 8 years of a negotiation, but maybe one day you'll be ready. But again, RCEP is an example of ASEAN, despite the limitations and all the problems that we are already very familiar. ASEAN cannot solve Myanmar, ASEAN cannot solve South China Sea, but ASEAN is indispensable in the sense that without ASEAN and ASEAN-led mechanism, almost impossible for you to see all these mechanisms from taking place. Again, it shows some kind of misunderstanding and blind spot in the mainstream circle, right? I know that in mainstream circle, US, UK, and Europe describe RCEP as China-led. That is so wrong, right? So in Southeast Asia, I know, Greg, you're smiling, right? Alvaro, you're smiling. You know that if RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, is China-led, you know Japan would not join, South Korea would not join, and Australia, New Zealand. Australia would not join, New Zealand, I'm not quite sure. But again, I think ASEAN, imperfect, but always indispensable. And BRICS is being seen as an additional platform to add on so that we can tackle different risks, different dangers as things become more uncertain.
And thank you so much for that, Professor Kuik. And I agree with you. Very good points you made, very illuminating for our participants. And the point about the NDB and the AIB is absolutely true. Obviously, the difference is that how do you become a member of the BRICS is a different question, because it's not really an organization. It's a forum. I see it more like, but I think it's gaining more shape as we go. I have a number of questions from some students. I'm going to put them all, summarize them, because we need to bring these to a conclusion. One of the questions was about Trump, which everyone is thinking, how do we handle Trump? It's a question from someone in the forum from Taiwan. How do we handle Trump? And Trump recently made a few statements about BRICS. He's tweeted, in fact, he mistakenly said that Spain was a BRICS member, which of course that will resolve the de-dollarization issue by calling it peseta. I guess that would be but obviously he has no idea what he's talking about, so that's an issue. The second question is, how can we think about domestic politics having an impact on Southeast Asian countries joining or wanting to join the BRICS? And the other one that I wanted to put forward is about Turkey. Turkey being a NATO country, a candidate country to the EU, also, an important, at least making statements about wanting to be closer to the BRICS, attending the summit in Russia over the summer, and so on. And how do you see this playing a role in the whole thing?
All right. Thanks very much. Let me be quicker than before. So 3 questions. I think the first question about how to handle Trump. I think that's a multi-million question that everybody is asking, right? I don't think anybody has an answer, but you're already seeing a lot of action and reaction, right? So clearly, I think Trump factor works in many ways. Many countries, governments who are kind of reluctant initially are kind of like collaborating in one way or another. But clearly, there are lots of resistance. There are lots of defiance. There are lots of like counteracting as well. I think Canada and Mexico get the extra month to continue to try to come up with a deal, right? Let's strike a deal. China is reacting because of the tariff already begun, but clearly China is reacting in quite a measured manner. So in the sense that they address a domestic issue, that address the external kind of pressure, but in a way also without trying to still avoid escalation. I think those parts are clear. So Southeast Asia, we are observing very nervously, right? We're very observing very nervously in the sense that we knew at the moment the targets seems to be US immediate neighbors, right? The closest partners, Mexico and Canada, and then the big adversary, China. But we know with Gaza, with Middle East, is clearly among the highlights. Europe clearly is a big issue that is very much under the Trump issue as well. But we knew that Southeast Asia at the moment, although at the moment we are not on Trump's radar, but it's just sooner or later with the threat about the BRICS 100% tariff. I think countries who are associating already get some preparation, I guess. How much we are preparing to handle that, I'm not quite sure. But I do think that the multi-alignment and the additional mindset, the try to cultivate as many additional mechanisms across the domains, not just economic, but also diplomatic and others, are clearly already in place, right? I don't think all these so-called plans B, not plan B, but plans B, either in Asia and Europe, really began only when Trump 2.0 become official. We could already see early efforts ongoing over the last months and last years and the last few years, right? So I think partnerships, creating as much active, inclusive, and also adaptive mechanism. Clearly, it's the common ways of not handling, but I think mitigating the risks that come together with Trump's policy in one way or another. And how domestic, second question about domestic politics, right? Thank you so much for raising this, which I was not able to cover when I was talking about, and when I was mentioning about Indonesia and Malaysia and Thailand. Clearly, domestic factor is a key factor, one of the key factors that drove all these governments of declaring or joining BRICS in one way or another, right? And there are some common characteristics in the sense that in the case of Thailand, Malaysia under Anwar, and also Indonesia under Prabowo, the BRICS decision are very much leadership decision, top down, right? Maybe some close advisors play some role, but clearly many of bureaucrats caught off surprise. That was quite clear from the media reporting. And all these countries, these three countries are democratic countries, right? So democratic in the sense that you can also hear lots of voices. So domestically, there are some excitement, but there are some anxiety as well, part and parcel of the democratic societies. But again, I think leaders are the one who make judgment. So the question is, to what extent domestic politics drove all these different leaders, different countries of different sizes to make decision of we want to have BRICS as one of the additional platform. Performance legitimation is clearly one big driving factor, right? So we are democratic countries. It means that we do rely on procedural legitimacy, right? Electoral legitimacy. Those are important. But how to win the next election depends a lot on economic performance. It depends a lot about internal performance, how you deal with the domestic internal problems. It's clearly something that leaders would want to count on. So any mechanism, BRICS is one of them. But as I said, not necessarily the principle, definitely not the sufficient one, but it is being seen as a positive mechanism that will help leaders to project the impression for the domestic audience that we are creating, cultivating a more platform and also a mechanism to position the country to face the greater uncertainty that we are seeing at the regional and also a global level. Sorry, I forgot the third and also the last question.
The third one was about Turkey's
okay,
positioning.
Right. I'm not quite sure whether I'm qualified to comment about Turkey. I've never been there, but coincidentally, Turkey's president has been visiting Malaysia the last 2 days, right? So if the one response that I can highlight is that all those logics that we mentioned early on over the last 1 hour, it applies to Southeast Asia. It does apply. They also apply to countries like Turkey and also many other regions. So what we are seeing early on when we say that we are witnessing an era of non-alignment via multi-alignment, clearly it's not just in Southeast Asia. We are seeing Turkey having even more high-profile, more proactive, inclusive, and adaptive efforts as well in so many ways. The same can be said about Latin America. The same can be said about many countries in Middle East, right? So I would think all this shows that we have judged that although there is no one single plan B to tackle all these uncertainties that we mentioned, but this in an era of the more, the merrier. It might look very incoherent because of lots of overlapping, not so coherent, but it boils back to our last point. The global leadership, the global South leadership, the global South cooperation is going to be very different from the global North or global West in the sense that it is fragmented, it is a sector by sector, it's going to be messy. Why is that? Because geopolitics is driving all these processes. And when geoeconomics is about efficiency, geopolitics is about security and just in case mindset. And I think I will stop here.
I think you're absolutely right. And we are so grateful with you for being our inaugural speaker, Greg and I. and my colleagues at the LSE Ideas and the LSE Global South Unit for having you. You illuminated many of the things that we are trying to understand, and that has been very, very, very important. So thank you so much, because we know it's quite late for you as well,
Thank you very
and for having that, and for mentioning other parts of the Global South, which is what we do at the Global South Unit, not because it's fashionable now. We've been doing it for over more than 2 decades, this sort of research. And with that in mind, I also want to thank Professor Gregory T for co-chairing, mediating moderating this series, and also David Sutton, who organized all the technical aspects, and Rosalie as well. Thank you for your help, and Claire. I'm really appreciative of that. Finally, I want to remind you that this is a series, and our first, this one was the first one. The next one, please mark it in your diaries. We will send you the specific title. But at the moment, the discussion is going to take place on Wednesday, the 14th of May, 2025, with Professor Cynthia Cuilioconi from Flaxo, Ecuador. The event will be about China and the Global South, with an emphasis on Latin America. So I think it's going to be very interesting and very exciting. And we will be sending you some more information about this. Please follow us on Twitter, and you'll see also the link as well. So thank you so much for everyone, and have a wonderful afternoon, morning, evening, wherever you are.
Thank you, Cheng-Chwee. Thank
again.
you, Alvaro.
Thank you,
Take
Greg. Thank you.
care.
Yeah, take care. Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.